Hi everyone, this is Angie Wong and I'm president of Legacy PAC. I just want to thank all of our followers. We're close to 100,000 followers on Facebook and we've only been around for a few short months. So thank you again. I'm going to ask you for your continued support leading up to 2024. Please donate to legacy-pac.org. That's legacy-pac.org. Thank you, and we'll see you on the campaign trail.
I'm Jared Craig, the host of the Vet Voice. On behalf of Veterans for America First, Veterans for Trump, and Legacy PAC, I have the pleasure of speaking with Joshua Holm, who is a U.S. Army veteran, who's a wounded veteran, and he has done some remarkable things. He has a great comeback story. He has been knocked down several times, and he never stops fighting. He has started an organization called Steel Hope, and I invite you to go on to steelhope.org and look up what he's doing, what his purpose is, and what has motivated him to be who he is today. So, Joshua, thank you for coming onto the show and share with our guests a little bit about your story.
Absolutely. Jared, well, thanks first off for having us, for having me, and just for giving me this time platform, and just be able to be a voice for our veterans, and just, first off, know that freedom isn't free, guys, but, price has already been paid. So all we got to do is just continue to keep that free by continue to stand up for our rights, stand up for our linking arms with our brothers and sisters in arms, and these linking hearts as well with true causes like this. So I just want to thank you first off for that. So a little bit on myself, man. I'm born and raised in Arkansas. I met my high school sweetheart, Crystal, and I joined the service in January of 2001 before 9/11 hit. I was in an AGR slot, which is very kind of rare, but then I switched from the reserves to active duty after 9/11 hit. And then I went active duty, and I served with the 4th Infantry Division. I was in 316 FA, and I spent the first year in Iraq. I was in the second wave of the first surge. So in 2003, I was deployed to Iraq. We were supposed to go to Turkey. I like to say that, I told them I prefer beef, and they shut the borders. But no, truly, we were supposed to go over to Turkey, and they shut the border. So we were all trained to go to Turkey. We had a lot of logistics stuff to go there. And then they shut the borders, and they said, you're going to go on a peacekeeping mission. You're going to go to Kuwait for about 6 months, and then you guys come home. I said, oh, this is awesome. This is bacon. This is good. And then we go to Kuwait. I spent about 6 days in Kuwait, and then we pushed right into Iraq. And I was in the second wave of the first surge. And it's very important that you guys know that, because in the first surge, everybody just plowed through everything. And so I was in the second wave of the first surge. What that means is that the enemy was more prepared for us. So we had a lot more things that happened. So all the roadways they say were clear were not cleared. We went in there, we had soft top Humvees on. So we were not truly armored up. So in the midst of battle, we had to learn how to be resilient and overcome right there in the midst of it. And then we also had a lot of politics going on that changed the rules of engagement consistently. So then we truly had to begin to link arms and hearts as veterans, and we had to figure out how to survive in the midst of battle. And it was chaotic. It was crazy. I was at a point, I was in Bakiba, Iraq, and Camp Warhorse, where in the 6-month period, we took over 600 confirmed mortar rounds that hit our base. And so that back then, that was called Camp Warhorse, or another name for it was Camp Boom was right beside it as well. And it was called Camp Gabe. So that was in Bakiba, Iraq. But rather than being, so my MOS, I was a 13 Delta Battalion FTC. So my physical job, what I was supposed to do in Iraq, is I was supposed to direct artillery shells to go everywhere. But because I was a big arms, big chest back then, in the military, you either volunteer or be voluntold. So I volunteered for everything. And I didn't want to be a boy. I didn't want to be sitting around waiting for just the enemy to hit us. I wanted to hit them first. So I volunteered to be a gunner. I got on top of the guns. I was carrying 50 cals, Mark 19s, 240 Bravos, and I also carried a M249, which is a squad automatic weapon. And so I saw a lot of battle, a lot of ballistics and stuff. And then I was also part of a team called CAT team, where we went around looking for explosives in Iraq. And so we were very limited on EOD squad. So we had to make sure it was a viable threat before we called it EOD, because if not, they would just set up these little mini little wires everywhere, but there's no explosives to it. So it's kind of a waste of time for EOD to really come out.
And while you're doing the, seeking for the IEDs, from other people that I know that were in the Iraq area, y'all were learning as you go, because these, I'll call them engineers, the very loose-ended terrorists that were putting these bombs together, they weren't trained very well. They were putting them together with all kind of wire coding, and there wasn't a lot of experience dealing with the civilians or the types of bombs that you were dealing with. And some of them were super old, like the artillery shells that they were setting up for IEDs were, sometimes 20, 30 years old.
Absolutely.
And so
yeah, and then we had to learn on the fly. So, in the midst of battle, you don't have time to think, you just react, because thinking gets you killed. So really, you have to learn how to react and then think about later on, saying when you do get that time. And then also, because I would do house raids as well. So 4.5 months, I was kicking indoors, and we worked 18 on, 6 hours off. So for 18 hours a day, we're on call, we're going house to house, place to place, and that started at night. And we did these night raids because we felt that the enemy was, more sensitive at night, because they didn't have all the night gear and stuff like that we had, the MBGs and so on like that, the blackout drives, different thing like that. So then for about 4.5 months, we were kicking indoors, you know what I'm saying? And we were looking for weapon caches. But then the rules of engagement just really got real sticky. So that it became so stupid at one time, brother, that literally, like, it became where that we had to see the muzzle flash of the enemy's weapon before we could shoot our weapon, before we could lock and load and shoot. And so we had to have a viable threat. And so there was a lot of things that we had to learn how to adapt and overcome in the moment, and we did that. So in June of 2003, while I was doing house raids, is when I got hit first. I got hit with 2 slugs at center mass in my chest. The doctors told me 2 to 5 more pounds of pressure would have broke my sternum, which would have split my heart, killed me instantly. And
you said that was a shotgun blast?
Yeah, it was a shotgun blast, double barrel shotgun. And so it hit me, and I didn't realize how fragile your insides are, even with armor on. And so eternally, it blew my chest apart, and I didn't realize it. But they gave me 3 days of infirmary. I didn't want to go home, so I stayed in. I could no longer do the raids and stuff. So then they said, you're just going to be on light duty, this, that, and the other. So I got back to my convoy, and I rested for a couple of days. Next thing you know, they're looking for a gunner. I jump on a gun, I'm going again. But it's a different thing. So I was always on the go, because a lot of people didn't want to be on the gun. So, I mean, that's the most, most exposed area to be. You're right there. You're either, on a 5-ton, you're on the back, saying, just holding on for dear life. I mean, a lot of these positions that you're on were not made to be true gunner positions. It's not like if you're in a tank or if you're artillery or something like that, there's actually a fixed, chair there. You're spinning around this and the other. But on the back of a 5-ton, there was no weapon set up for, a cruiser weapon to be on a 5-ton. So in the moment, literally, we had to learn how we were going to put, a sandbag down, for a ballistic for our shield. And then we took ratchet straps and put it around, and we took the spare tire off and used that mounting bracket to hold on the 5-ton or the Mark 19, which is a grenade launcher. So in the moment, we truly had to learn how to be adaptive, and in the moment, figure out what worked and what didn't work. And so honestly, some of those things that really happened in the midst of war, I call my 1 year of being deployed. I call it being my longest and shortest year of my entire life, because honestly, it happened so quick, it didn't even really feel like a year. But yeah, as I reflect on it now, Jared, I mean, it's like I've learned so much from reflecting back and seeing, saying, because it's very easy to see war, but then I had to choose how to go to a warm place not to see war. Because, I'm saying, a lot of things happen. So to make a long story short, because I don't want to spend all this time talking about just the injuries of war, is, because my whole concept is life after the fall. But to make a long story short, I was injured, yes, in that first blast. And then August 15th, I was running for mortar attack, and my legs outrun my body. So as I fall, my legs outrun my body. I'm going face first into this pea gravel, and there's a 60mm mortar that landed 3 feet in front of me. It embedded in gravel, so the gravel became shrapnel. So I fell on my face, and my hands were open like this, and the shrapnel went in my gloves, hit my face, and hit me in my chest. And that was just pea gravel. So that was not the ground exploding, but it was a 60mm mortar, and it landed 3 feet in front of me. And so I can tell you when in that moment, I couldn't say it then, but I can say it now. One of the greatest things was me falling on my face. A lot of times, people don't ever want to look at that, saying as a great thing is to fall, but what I've learned to begin to see all three sides of a coin. A lot of times we see head or tails, but there's a side, saying, and that's actually how they measure it on the money and stuff is, saying that's how they see if it's real or not is the grooves in the quarter on the side, and they're all equal. And a lot of times we look at things like that. We want to see either the head or the tail, but we can't see there's a groove all the way around it. And that's actually how they see if it's counterfeit or not. Like the machines, that they measure that to see, hey, that's real. And so
yeah, you have shown that you are resilient, and the mere fact that you took a shotgun blast to the chest and stayed in country and then went right back out. Were you completely rehabbed and, as the military put it, fit for duty when you went back out on the more recent event that you were speaking about with the artillery?
Yeah. And then so that was August 15th. And so then I was given two weeks of infirmary. And then back then we didn't have public plumbing. So once again they asked me, say, you going home? I said, no, I'm not going to go home. Because it said in my medical record, fell while running from mortar attacks. And that's exactly what happened. I fell while running. Well, see, you have to see the whole side. And the reason we're talking about the wholeness, the whole health, the whole aspect of it is because back then I saw one side. I saw people laughing at me when I fell on my face. Now, let me tell you what I see now. I realized that they were laughing at me was a coping mechanism of how they were dealing with fear.
Right.
And so that's very important to know that side, because a lot of people, when I say that story, people get mad about the people that and I was at one time, but I've learned to have that process of healing, you know what I'm saying? And now I realized that was just a coping mechanism. That's how they were dealing with the stressful situation and fear. We were all scared.
Right. Young kids scared in a war zone.
I was 19 years old.
Halfway around the world. Yeah, I deal with stressful events, and you're right. Some people have a very inappropriate laughter when they have stressful events, and that is a common thing. So it's very wise of you to reflect back and say, that's a coping mechanism, to not retain some of that animosity towards them, because I think a lot of people don't get that far. They just stay with the two-sided coin, as you put it.
Absolutely. And it's easy. It's easy to be biased in that sense, because I mean, you see service, you see sacrifice, but yeah, you also don't see the fact that people are scared, and that's okay. And that's just part of the process that it's okay to have fears, but it's not okay to be bound by fear. You know what I'm saying? Because you can either choose to be bound or you choose to be found by the same way you were bound. So there's chains that can either hold you or they can propel you going forward. It all depends on what you do with the chains. So back to the story. So then it was August 15th. So I was given 2 weeks of infirmary, basically light duty. But in that period of light duty, back then we didn't have public plumbing. So I'm literally burning the waste outside the point. So we had to burn our own poop, to be honest with you. And if anybody had been around these burn pits or anything in that sense, when you're doing that task, it's like burning tires. It's like this black smoke going up in the air. You know what I'm saying? That's exactly what's going on. And so I was sergeant over the detail, and so we had to carry the waste outside of our point because it's waste. So we don't want to have that smell around us, this, that, and the other. And so you dig a big hole, 48 inches, you know what I'm saying, and then you wait for it to burn. And it's not like you just throw fire on it, so you throw JP8 on it or with jet fuel, and you start, and it burns off. It burns one layer, and then you stir it, and then you have to relight it. So it's a process, and it's not a fun job, but someone had to do it. And because I was on light duty, that's exactly what they did it. You get these true enough crap jobs, literally. And so with that being said, that's when September 1st happened. That's when my third injury happened. So we're burning waste outside the point. The enemy began to walk mortars into the camp using the light from the fire that I didn't even know that they were using. And I didn't want to be a boy crying wolf. So I had two guys on the point with me. So one guy I sent to the Tactical Operations Center to find out what's going on. Back then in 2003, another filler here is the fact that we didn't have the alarm set up like they have on the big military base of thing now, letting people know, hey, this is incoming or outgoing. So I had to kind of like figure out that myself. And then I had a field pack on. So then I took the radio and I asked for permission to cease the burning. And my brigade, my top, they actually denied me to cease the burning. So I had to continue to be on the point. I was not released on the point. So I released the first guy to go to the top to find out what's going on. And so he didn't come back. So then something just did not feel right. So at that moment, I made a command decision that, okay, this is not a safe place. And I told the other private, I said, I want you to run as fast as you can, because he was bigger than me. He was a lot slower than me, because honestly, I was very fit in the military. I'm fit now, but I was very, very fit in the military. I ran my 2 miles in 9:47 just jogging, and that was out of 613 guys. I was the fastest runner in my battalion, other than one guy that was a silver medal Olympian. And so he came in as an athlete. And so, I mean, I felt that was pretty good. I mean, and my nickname in Iraq was also Ice, because I was solid, but I was cool about it. I didn't let my muscles go to my head. But anyways, so then on September 1st, so when this happened, the enemy began to walk more into the camp. And so then I finally flipped the poo over, and I took off running myself. And as I did, then I just began to hear these Pringle cans. That's what it sounds like when the mortar's going off, just hollow Pringle cans just going off. And so then as I take off running past the latrine, I felt like a gust of wind just hit me and threw me over to my left. And I didn't realize it at the moment. It happened so quick and so fast, and the adrenaline was too much that I got hit on my right side. I got peppered by shrapnel on my right side. And I got back up, and I heard the Pringle cans going off. So I knew more mortars coming in, so I had to run. And as I ran past the latrine, you were saying, because I had already got hit, I got back up, continued running. I could see my bunker. I could see my way out. But before I made it to my bunker, Jared, I fell in a 10 to 12 foot chamber. It's called a spider hole. And I hit my head going down, and I broke my right ankle 4 places, my left ankle 3, shattered both my knees, spinal fracture on both my legs. I didn't realize that these injuries were so bad. I was knocked out cold. And when I came to, all I remember is my eyes were burning. My legs felt like they were on fire. And I mean, and then I looked up, and I couldn't see, I could barely see above me. It was just a big hole. And so someone pulled me out of the hole. And they carried me to the medics. I was blacking in and out. And the medics were like, "We just saw you." So I'm still cut up from the 2 weeks ago when I was cut up with shrapnel and stuff, with peppers. So because I'm the field medic, I had a thing over here that said cross on it, because I had went through a class and learned a few more. I wasn't a medic, but because in the midst of battle, they allow certain people to go through a little bit more education and become a medic in the moment, just to get them where they need to go. So you learn how to do a tracheotomy, you learn how to do, combat, more than just a combat lifesaver course. You do a little bit more advanced stuff. So with that being said, I was that. So then, because people were a lot more injured than I was, I just kind of put myself aside, honestly. I really didn't think of it. So the next 4.5 months, I'm just ace bandaging my legs up, and so make a long story short, I walked on broken legs for 4.5 months until I got back to the States. And then by the time I got back to the States, they put me on a profile, due to my feet just swelling and this, that, and the other. And see, I was combat arms. And so because of that, I mean, it was all male unit, you know what I'm saying? And in the military, this is where the drive came from. They taught me, suck it up, drive on, shoot, move, and communicate, and adapt and overcome. So that's exactly what I did in the moment. And because I did not complain, they saw there was no problem. And so I got back from Iraq, and I was administered this PT test. And I literally fell out in the run. I fell out in the walk, actually. And they picked me up twice, and I fell right back down. I told them, I said, "Guys, with all due respect, I cannot walk." And they took me to the medics. They took me to the hospital, and they put me in a half body cast because of my broken legs.
And I think on your website, and you've shared some photographs of you in different times. And I think I saw a photograph of you in the body cast. And having been mobile and this was, your legs were not completely healed from the breaks after 4.5 months. And you said that led to complications in relearning how to walk and relearning how to, do everyday tasks. And this is before you had access to a lot of I'll say the modern equipment that we have now, the rehab facilities. When you came back stateside, how did that change in your treatment and your care? Did it kind of get focused in where you were speaking up more detailed? So go through that.
Yeah, so over the years, so honestly, what happened was I was under what's called med hold. This was before WTU existed. It was called med hold. What they did is, long story short, they actually put everyone who was being medically discharged in with everybody who was either crazy or people being chaptered out for discipline reasons. And they put us all in one unit combined, and it was called med hold. And so all they did, they just tasked us out, and the people were just waiting for the medicals to go through. So my ETS date, which means my enlistment date, fell before this. So either I could, and I was in a rapid deployment unit. So what they did is they just patched people up. And because we were in a high demand, they would just task us out to different units to go different places. And so I was going to lose my combat arm status. And because I'm no longer able to do the task at hand, I was going to be, more like logistics or administration or something like that. So I was not going to be in that field anymore. So they were going to reclass me and just take me out in a different unit if I stayed in. So I said, my ETS date is here. So then I transitioned from the military and joined the ministry. And so that's how my healing began. But my wife was very wise and said, go to the VA and get checked out. I went to the VA, and be honest with you, they threw me 10% disability. But then we consistently began to fight it. And it took 10 years to get my retirement, but I'm sitting at 100% now because that consistency of my wife just continued to be there with me. And I didn't know I had a brain injury because later on, complications of the injury, I didn't know I had a broken back. I didn't know I had a broken neck. And none of those things happened. I began to use the body, and my body began to fall apart. I began to lose bowel movements. I began to have, issues, standing, equilibrium issues. But in 2009, I had 2 brain hemorrhages and a stroke from a brain injury I didn't know I had. Because for 5.5 years, I had blood and cerebral fluid building in my brain, which actually finally exposed itself. And so I went from, they call me the comeback kid, you know what I'm saying? And that's the thing. I've always been there to bounce back from these things that have happened to. I've been in the wheelchair 3 times. The doctor said, you're never going to walk again. You'll be in the wheelchair for the rest of your life, period. And that's happened multiple times over, including right now. Just for the viewers know, I'm actually physically sitting in a rehab right now, learning how to walk again from complications of these injuries. So this is almost 20 years from this original injuries, but because of complications, I'm having to take a step back. But yet, I just tell people it's a setback for a great comeback.
Well, one thing that we've been doing with Veterans for America First, Veterans for Trump, and Legacy PAC is trying to promote not only the America First agenda, but those issues that apply to the veterans. I don't know if you knew this about me, but I ran for U.S. Congress this last term. And one of the big things that I was running on was automatic enrollment into the VA benefits, to have a full examination upon discharge, prior to discharge, not to put Band-Aids on bullet wounds, lack of a better phrase, and push people right back out into active service. But before you release them, to have an evaluation, because we're fighting homelessness, we're fighting access to medical care, and we're fighting drug addiction. And that brings something we spoke about off air. A good friend of mine and client, his name is Josh Felician, and he's also a U.S. Army vet who took his own life last night. And our entire area here of friends and circle of friends are kind of beside ourselves, trying to make sense of things. And with the VA having to fight so hard to get treatment, to get access to medical care, emotional support, mental health issues, we're losing way too many soldiers on a daily basis. And that brings me to your organization, Steel Hope. And I think one of the things that you've been focusing on is providing hope and providing an uplifting spirit. I have seen so many people in your position that they feeling defeated, and we all have good days and bad days, but you are a beacon of hope just from talking to you. You're the comeback kid, and I know you're going to come back again, and I know you're going to be out of that chair because from your story, you can read that you've done it before. You've gotten out of that chair. You've proven it wrong.
Absolutely.
So Josh, I wanted to invite you to talk about your organization. If you have any events coming up, what's your organization doing in the near future, either in Texas, nationwide, and how people can go on to learn more about your organization?
Absolutely. Okay, so in 2013, me and my wife, we came up with the concept of creating Steel Hope. Because as a mentor now, one of the things I do is my concept is to reach one and then teach one to reach one. It's very simple. And what I've learned, even with having traumatic brain injury, after having the stroke, I have to go on this and say real quick about how I got back on my feet, was that my wife said, "Babe, you got to find purpose through your pain." And so when she said that, I had the stroke, so my hand was crippled like this, whatever. And I began to stretch out my hand because what brings change, Jared, is consistency and persistence. And the thing is, I had to realize that, saying to create the change that I had to see the change that I wanted to be. And so I looked in the mirror, and I remember one time when my wife, she literally said, "Yeah, you need a timeout, and I need a timeout." She put me in the corner. One of the greatest things that she could have ever done, because when she did, she put me in that timeout. I had to face myself, and there was a mirror beside the couch, and I remember hearing a voice say, "Joshua, what do you see?" And I looked in the mirror, and I said, "I see a victim," because I lashed out, and I heard that mirror whisper back at me, "I see a victor." See, we got to begin to see things differently, and then that's how you begin to do things differently. And so we started Still Hope because I wrote my first book. I wrote 8 letters to God with these 2 fingers. I crippled my right hand because that's the only thing I could use on my left hand. But I crippled my right hand to be a finger to equal it out. And I wrote 8 letters to God. It became my first book called Some of My Life Lessons. Well, that became a blueprint to doing everything I could do. 9 months later, I met an amazing man named Dave Reaver. And if you don't know Dave Reaver, you definitely need to check him out, because he's a mentor. He was trained by Billy Graham. He's a master resiliency coach, and he's an amazing guy. But he got me back on my feet, and talk about the military and the ministry, and that became my M&M, and that's good. Because the thing is, it began to get me hope again. And so then while we started Still Hope, because we wanted people to understand that you have to look over yourself, your circumstance, and your situation, and you'll see there's a hurting world all around us, and they need 2 things: help and hope. And if you do your part, no matter how small or how big it is, there's always hope. And so that's why we started Still Hope. And so for years, this organization has been around, but it's been more behind the scenes, helping a lot of organizations and assisting different people, at a small level. But then in 2016, I went and visited a small town in Mineral Wells, Texas. It's about 50 miles away from Dallas Fort Worth area. And while I was there, that's when the magic happened. I call it my wrong turn made right. So I simply went to go turn around in the driveway after looking at a project that really just wasn't a good fit for me. It looked perfect on paper, but yet the logistics was all there, but then there was no peace there. And as I go to turn around this driveway, I was given a vision, and I was given a vision of a man. He had 1 leg, and he was amputee, and on his left hand he had a dog on the leash. On the right hand he was throwing a frisbee, so I thought it was a frisbee. And there was a girl and a boy behind it, and they were skipping and just having fun. So what I saw was joy. What I felt was peace. But what I saw was a picture of restoration. This house that was burnt, I'm saying, I no longer saw it as a burnt house. I saw it as a beautiful restored home, and I saw a place of restoration. And the Lord put in my heart, he said, if you build it, they shall come. And he gave me the vision on building Still Freedom Ranch. So in early 2017, we purchased the property. Everything logistically worked out after months and months of research and just, waiting for everything, everything to line up, happen. And so me and my wife, we moved from the Keller area, Dallas Fort Worth area, and we moved to Mineral Wells. It's about half a mile from the property. We bought a home, and then we have the project. So there's two separate areas there. And this property is sitting on 9.5 acres. And the Lord gave me a vision of building Still Freedom Ranch, a place to recover, rediscover, and rebuild your life one step at a time. So it's been a project, let me tell you. I mean, it is still a project, but now we've gotten with the architect, and we have the entire layout of how we're going to do it. Our vision is to see it to be a national training center for all the Texas serving their families, on top of just a safe place where people can just come and have hope restored and focus on healing. And our vision is to see a 1 to 7 day retreat.
Seems like a good place for fellowship, not only military people, but Christians, injured people, people with like minds, like principles, like interests, and like conflicts. So you can rely on one another, because the majority of our healing, and I'll say moving forward, we do on our own, and it becomes to perception. And I think that you nailed it right on the head by saying you can choose to look at that pain as a barrier. But the way that you put it, you have to have a purpose for your pain. Is that something that your wife came up with out of the thin blue air? It seems to be perfect. So absolutely. I want to invite everyone who's watching to go on to stillhope.org and make donations to the ranch. And is it set up to take donations from the website?
Yes, it is. It's set up on the website. They can go directly to stillhope.org, and they can see some of the pictures and everything of the ranch, which we're trying to work a lot more on that. If you're on Facebook, you can go to Still Hope Foundation, and you can see pictures of the events that we've done, which we're going to have another big event in November called Unity Field, and Unity is United Noble Individuals Together Yearning. And so I can tell you, I have a God-given gift that with my brain injury, because, you know what I'm saying, through our weakness, you know what I'm saying, because what I've learned is that physically I focus on my strengths, but spiritually I focus on my weakness, because the word of God says through my weakness, Christ is made strong. So I'm nothing but a vessel of charge and a vessel of change. And so the weaker I come in myself as a being, you know what I'm saying, a being, a vessel that God can use just to help uplift people. And really that's where my healing comes from, the acronym that my wife came with, HOPE, and it's helping others problems raised. So Still Hope is actually an acronym, and it's a heart that's beating for others. That's why our slogan is our heart beats for others. And so, I mean, it's so much more than what I could say within a 30-minute period. I'm telling you, you just really have to feel it. And what our vision is we want to build a place of healing and hope for others. And we want it where people can come and be free, but we want other organizations to come and facilitate their program under our place. And we want to partner, link arms with hearts with other organizations and individuals that want to have that hope and want to instill that hope in other people. And I believe that this is a crumb of a cake of a beautiful place of restoration. And so I just encourage each and every one of you guys to connect with us online. My personal website is themanofsteel.com and stillhope.org. And connect with us. I mean, we're people just like you. We struggle. We have things that we're going through as well, but we gain strength, you know what I'm saying, in the middle of the storm, through not focusing on the struggles, but finding the strength. Because people in life, they look at it, they're like, if I had less stress, I'd be okay. But you talk to anybody who builds for a living, architect or engineer, and I've asked them, what can you build without stress? They say nothing. So I say no stress, no structure. Your focus got to be right.
Well, I think you're doing God's work, and I think you're doing the right thing the right way. And that brings us to a close. Once again, I want to bring everybody's attention to stillhope.org. Make donations that, and maybe of your time. If you're a local person that lives around the area, maybe donate your time, because it's not just money. Sometimes your time can be way more valuable. And Joshua, I'd like to possibly have you back on the show in the near future to keep an eye on how you're doing and the projects you've got going. And you're going to see me on Facebook and everywhere else around. I invite you to follow our organization likewise. And if there's anything that you need from us, please feel free to reach out to me.